Harvard researchers recently analyzed the knee joints of over 2,000 skeletons. Some of these skeletons were 6,000 years old. They belonged to hunter-gatherers, people who walked 20 to 30 miles every single day, squatted for hours to cook and eat, carried heavy loads, climbed trees, and used their bodies in ways that would absolutely destroy the joints of a modern American. The researchers expected to find severe joint degeneration, bone grinding on bone, cartilage worn down to nothing. After all, if joint pain is caused by wear and tear, by simply using your joints too much over a lifetime, then these ancient humans should have had the worst joints in human history. But that's not what they found. Not even close. The hunter-gatherers had remarkably healthy joints, minimal degeneration, strong, intact cartilage, wide joint spaces. In fact, when they compared these ancient skeletons to modern Americans of the same age, they discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about joint pain. Modern Americans who sit in chairs, drive cars, and use their joints far less than hunter-gatherers ever did have double the rate of knee arthritis. Let me say that again. We use our joint half as much, but we have twice as much joint degeneration. This study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It was led by Dr. Ian Wallace at Harvard University, and it completely demolishes the idea that joint pain is caused by wear and tear. If that were true, ancient humans would have been crippled by joint problems. But they weren't. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what this research reveals about the real cause of age-related joint pain and why everything your doctor has told you about your knees, your hips, your hands is probably wrong. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the wear and tear theory is a myth. You'll discover what's actually happening inside your joints at the molecular level. And you'll learn about a specific science-backed approach that addresses the root cause. An approach that's been validated in 14 clinical trials and is helping thousands of people over 50 reclaim mobility they thought was gone forever. Let's start with what you've been told your entire life. You've probably heard some version of this from a doctor. Your joints are like car tires. The more you use them, the more they wear out. It's just normal aging. There's nothing you can do about it. And on the surface, that makes sense, right? Everything else wears out with use. Shoes wear out. Engines wear out. Why wouldn't joints? Here's why. Your joints are not tires. They're not mechanical parts. They're living tissue with an incredible ability to regenerate and repair themselves if they have what they need to do so. And when you understand what that Harvard study actually revealed, you'll see why the wear and tear model is not just incomplete, it's dangerously misleading. Dr. Ian Wallace and his team at Harvard analyzed knee joint samples from skeletons spanning 6,000 years of human history. They looked at prehistoric hunter-gatherers from various regions. They examined early agricultural societies. They studied skeletons from the industrial era. And they compared all of these to modern Americans. They were specifically looking for signs of osteoarthritis, the breakdown of cartilage, and changes in bone structure that cause joint pain. Here's what they found. In prehistoric hunter-gatherers, the prevalence of knee arthritis was around 6%. In early agricultural populations, it increased slightly to about 8%. But in modern Americans, it jumped to 16%. That's double the rate of people who lived far more physically demanding lives. And this increase happened relatively recently, mostly in the last 50 to 70 years. Think about what this means. Hunter-gatherers didn't have ergonomic chairs. They squatted to rest. They didn't have cars. They walked or ran everywhere. They didn't have grocery stores. They hunted animals and gathered plants, often covering vast distances every single day. They climbed. They lifted. They twisted and bent and used their bodies in constant, intense ways from childhood until death. By the wear and tear theory, their joints should have been obliterated. But they weren't. Dr. Daniel Lieberman, who chairs the Department of Human Evolutionary Biology at Harvard, put it this way: our joints did not evolve to get arthritis. They evolved to last our entire lives. He's absolutely right. And that raises the critical question: if it's not wear and tear, what is causing modern joint degeneration? Before I answer that, let me tell you what I've heard from so many people watching this channel. You tried glucosamine. You've tried chondroitin. You've tried fish oil. turmeric collagen supplements. Maybe you've done physical therapy. Maybe you've gotten cortisone injections, and nothing has given you lasting relief. Your knees still feel stiff in the morning. Your hands still ache when the weather changes. You still avoid stairs when you can. You still struggle to get up from low chairs. And your doctor keeps saying the same thing. It's just aging. There's nothing we can do except manage the pain. But here's what that Harvard study proves. It is not just aging. Because if it were just the passage of time and normal use, ancient humans would have had worse joints than us. The fact that they didn't mean something else is happening. Something changed in the last 50 years that's causing joints to break down at rates our ancestors never experienced. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Another group of researchers decided to investigate what actually happens inside joints as we age. They weren't looking at bones. They were looking at something else entirely, the fluid inside your joints. It's called synovial fluid, and most people have never even heard of it. But this fluid is absolutely critical. And what these researchers discovered about synovial fluid changes everything. Your joints are not just two bones rubbing together with a little cartilage in between. Inside every major joint in your body, there's a specialized fluid called synovial fluid. This fluid has a very specific consistency. It's thick, viscous, almost gel-like. Scientists sometimes call it joint jelly because of how it behaves. This fluid surrounds your cartilage, filling the space between your bones. And it has three absolutely critical functions. First, it lubricates. When you bend your knee or rotate your shoulder, that movement happens smoothly because of synovial fluid. It acts like a cushion between the cartilage surfaces, preventing friction and grinding. Second, it delivers nutrients. Here's something most people don't know. Cartilage has no blood supply. None. The only way cartilage gets oxygen and nutrients is through synovial fluid. The fluid absorbs nutrients from the blood vessels in the joint capsule, then delivers them directly to cartilage cells. Without healthy synovial fluid, your cartilage literally starves. Third, it protects. Synovial fluid acts as a barrier, shielding your cartilage from inflammatory molecules called cytokines. When this barrier is strong and thick, cytokines can't reach the cartilage to damage it. But when the fluid thins out, and I'll explain exactly why that happens, those inflammatory molecules can attack the cartilage directly, causing breakdown and pain. So synovial fluid is not just important. It's the foundation of joint health. And here's the key question. What makes synovial fluid thick and protective? What gives it that gel-like consistency that allows it to cushion, nourish, and protect your cartilage? The answer is a molecule called hyaluronan. Sometimes it's called hyaluronic acid, but hyaluronan is the more accurate scientific term. This molecule was first discovered by researchers at Columbia University in the 1930s, and since then, thousands of studies have been published about it. Dr. J.R. Levick at St. George's Hospital Medical School in London calls hyaluronan the guardian molecule of joints. And once you understand what it does, you'll see why that description is perfect. Hyaluronan is a large, complex molecule that has an almost magical property. Each molecule can absorb up to 1,000 times its own weight in water. Think about that for a second. One molecule absorbing 1,000 times its weight in fluid. It's like a microscopic sponge, except far more effective than any sponge you've ever used. When your synovial fluid is rich in hyaluronan, it's thick, viscous, and gel-like, perfect for lubricating and protecting your joints. When hyaluronan levels are high, your cartilage stays hydrated, nourished, and shielded from inflammation. But here's the problem. Starting around age 30, you begin losing hyaluronan from your synovial fluid. It's a gradual process, about 1% per year. That might not sound like much. 1% doesn't seem significant, but it adds up. By age 40, you've lost 10%. By age 50, 20%. By age 60, 30%. And if you live to 80, you've lost 50% of the hyaluronan you had at 30. Now imagine what that means for your joints. As hyaluronan levels drop, your synovial fluid becomes thinner. It loses that gel-like consistency. It can't cushion as effectively. It can't deliver nutrients as efficiently. And it can't shield your cartilage from inflammatory cytokines anymore. your cartilage starts to dehydrate. It becomes brittle. Pieces start to flake off. And without adequate protection, inflammation takes hold. That's when you start to feel stiffness, pain, limited range of motion. The symptoms you've been told are just normal aging. But it gets worse. Recent research has shown that environmental factors accelerate this hyaluronan breakdown. Air pollution, specifically, has been linked to faster degradation of hyaluronan molecules. Studies have found that people living in areas with high pollution levels experience more rapid joint degeneration, even when controlling for age and activity level. So if you live in or near a city, your synovial fluid might be thinning out even faster than the normal 1% per year. This is the real cause of age-related joint pain, not wear and tear, not overuse. It's the progressive loss of hyaluronan in your synovial fluid, leading to thin, inadequate fluid that can't protect your cartilage anymore. And this explains the Harvard study perfectly. Ancient humans didn't have pollution. They didn't have processed foods full of inflammatory compounds. They didn't have sedentary lifestyles that prevented proper circulation of synovial fluid. Their hyaluronan levels stayed higher longer. So even though they used their joints intensely, those joints remained healthy because the underlying biochemistry was functioning properly. Modern Americans, on the other hand, lose hyaluronan faster due to pollution and inflammatory diets. We move less, so our synovial fluid doesn't circulate as effectively. And we've been told the wrong solution for decades. We've been told to take glucosamine and chondroitin, supplements that target cartilage building blocks, but completely ignore synovial fluid. It's like trying to fix a car engine without checking the oil. You can replace parts all day long, but if there's no oil to lubricate and protect those parts, they're going to fail anyway. And speaking of glucosamine, let me tell you what the research actually says about it, because this is important. For years, glucosamine and chondroitin were the go-to supplements for joint health. Doctors recommended them. Pharmacies sold millions of bottles. People spent billions of dollars on these supplements. But then the National Institutes of Health decided to fund a massive, comprehensive study to find out if they actually work. This study was called the GATE Trial, Glucosamine/Chondroitin Arthritis Intervention Trial. It cost $12.4 million. It enrolled 572 patients with knee osteoarthritis. It was a 2-year, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, the gold standard of clinical research. And the results? There was zero significant difference between glucosamine, chondroitin, and placebo. None. Dr. Antonio Zalaprantis, who directs the Center for Skeletal Research at Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is affiliated with Harvard Medical School, said this about glucosamine: it's been debunked. Dr. Robert Schmerling, also at a Harvard-affiliated hospital, stated, there is no convincing evidence that glucosamine provides significant relief. Now, why doesn't glucosamine work? Because it targets the wrong problem. Glucosamine is a building block of cartilage. The idea was that by taking it as a supplement, you'd give your body extra raw materials to rebuild damaged cartilage. And in theory, that sounds reasonable. But here's what that approach misses. Your cartilage can't rebuild itself if it doesn't have adequate synovial fluid delivering nutrients. It doesn't matter how many building blocks you provide if the delivery system is broken. It's like trying to build a house in the desert with no water supply. You can have all the bricks and lumber you want, but without water for the workers, without water for mixing concrete, the construction isn't going to happen. Cartilage regeneration requires healthy, fixed synovial fluid. Without sufficient hyaluronan to keep that fluid gel-like and protective, glucosamine is useless. So millions of people have been taking supplements that don't address the root cause. They've been told to rest their joints, to avoid activities they love, to accept that pain and stiffness are inevitable. And all the while, the real problem, the thinning of their synovial fluid due to hyaluronan loss, has been ignored. Now, you might be wondering, if this is such a critical molecule, and we're losing it every year, why hasn't anyone developed a solution? Why isn't every doctor talking about hyaluronan? Good question. And the answer is, some researchers have been working on this. And what they've discovered is remarkable. There's a research team in Barcelona Spain, that spent years developing a patented form of hyaluronan specifically designed to support synovial fluid. It's called Mobility, and it's different from regular hyaluronan supplements in a crucial way. Most hyaluronan supplements use molecules that are either too large or in a form that doesn't effectively reach the synovial fluid. Mobility uses a specific molecular weight and structure that's been shown in clinical trials to actually increase hyaluronan levels inside the joint space. In fact, studies published in the journal Clinical Nutrition Supplements showed that Mobility increases hyaluronan concentration in synovial fluid by a factor of 10. That's a 1,000% increase. And this wasn't just a single study. This compound has been tested in 14 separate double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials. Let me be clear about what that means. Double-blind means neither the patients nor the researchers knew who was getting the real compound versus placebo. This eliminates bias. Placebo-controlled means they compared results against people taking inactive pills. This ensures the effects are real, not just psychological. In these trials, patients taking 80 milligrams of Mobility daily experienced significant improvements in joint comfort, flexibility, and mobility. Some saw changes as early as month 1. Others saw progressive improvement through month 6 and beyond. The research was rigorous. The results were published in peer-reviewed medical journals. And thousands of people have now used this exact protocol with documented success. But before I go further into that, I want to share another piece of this puzzle. Because there's a place on Earth where people seem to have naturally high hyaluronan levels, and their joint health is extraordinary. There's a remote village in Japan called Yuzurihara. It's tucked into the mountains, far from major cities. The people there have a traditional diet and lifestyle that's been relatively unchanged for generations. And researchers noticed something unusual about the elderly residents of this village. They were farming rice fields 8, 10, 12 hours a day well into their 80s and 90s. Squatting, bending, lifting heavy loads. Activities that would leave most American seniors in severe pain. So researchers decided to investigate. They took X-rays of the joints of Yuzurihara seniors and compared them to X-rays of American seniors of the same age. The difference was stunning. The American X-rays showed severe degeneration. Bone-on-bone grinding. Virtually no space between the joint surfaces. Classic osteoarthritis. But the Yuzurihara X-rays looked like they belonged to people in their 20s or 30s. Wide, healthy joint spaces. Intact cartilage. No significant degeneration. What was their secret? Diet. Specifically, they consumed large amounts of a purple sweet potato called satsumemo. And this particular variety of sweet potato has been shown to naturally boost hyaluronan production in the body. It contains specific compounds that support the synthesis of this critical molecule. So these seniors, through their traditional diet, were maintaining higher hyaluronan levels than typical modern populations. Their synovial fluid stayed thick and protective. And even with intense physical activity, their joints remained healthy. Now, does that mean you need to eat 3 or 4 purple sweet potatoes every day to protect your joints? Theoretically, yes, but that's not realistic for most people. The Mobility research essentially took the principle discovered in Yuzurihara and created a concentrated, bioavailable form that delivers the same hyaluronan support without requiring massive dietary changes. And there's one more component to this that makes it even more effective. The Barcelona researchers didn't stop with just Mobility. They combined it with another compound that works synergistically, French maritime pine bark extract. This extract comes from pine trees grown along the southwestern coast of France. It's an incredibly potent antioxidant that has a unique property. It concentrates directly in synovial fluid. Studies have shown that when you consume pine bark extract, it doesn't just circulate in your bloodstream. It actually accumulates in the synovial fluid, where it provides powerful antioxidant protection. Here's why that matters. Hyaluronan molecules are vulnerable to oxidative damage. Free radicals and reactive oxygen species can break down hyaluronan, accelerating the thinning of synovial fluid. By providing concentrated antioxidant protection right in the joint space, French maritime pine bark helps preserve the hyaluronan that's there while supporting the effectiveness of newly introduced Mobility. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have shown that pine bark extract reduces inflammation markers in joints, improves flexibility, and decreases pain scores in people with osteoarthritis. When combined with Mobility, the effect is synergistic, meaning the combination works better than either ingredient alone. The full protocol also includes ginger root, which has been used for centuries as a natural anti-inflammatory, and Boswellia serrata, an extract from an Indian tree that's been shown to reduce the activity of inflammatory cytokines. There's also bioperine, a black pepper extract that enhances the absorption of all these compounds by up to 2,000%. Now, I put together a detailed scientific presentation that goes much deeper into all of this. It walks through the clinical trials step by step. It shows you the exact dosages that were used in the Barcelona studies. It explains the specific mechanism by which Mobility multiplies synovial fluid hyaluronan, and it reveals how you can use this research-backed protocol yourself. This presentation isn't some sales pitch. It's a comprehensive breakdown of the peer-reviewed science. You'll see the actual data from the 14 clinical trials. You'll understand exactly why this approach is different from glucosamine or anything else you've tried before. And you'll discover why thousands of people over 50 who thought they were doomed to a life of joint pain are now experiencing mobility and comfort they haven't felt in years. Here's what you need to do. Right now, pause this video. Go to the description below. Click the first link you see. That link will take you to the free presentation. It's about a few minutes long. Watch it all the way through. By the end, you'll have a complete understanding of the root cause of joint pain and what you can do about it. I have to warn you, though, this presentation could be taken down at any time. The information challenges a lot of conventional medical wisdom, and not everyone in the industry is happy about that. So don't wait. Don't tell yourself you'll watch it later. Click that link right now while it's still available. Give yourself the next 5 minutes to learn what could genuinely change your quality of life. The link is in the description. Click it now. I'll be here when you get back. All right, whether or not you decide to check out that presentation, let me continue with some additional information that's important to understand about synovial fluid and joint health. One question I get asked a lot is, how do I know if my hyaluronan levels are low? Is there a test? Unfortunately, there's no simple blood test you can take. Measuring hyaluronan in synovial fluid requires extracting fluid directly from the joint with a needle, which is invasive and not practical for routine screening. But there are clear warning signs that your synovial fluid has thinned out and your hyaluronan levels are depleted. The first sign is morning stiffness that lasts longer than 30 minutes. When you first wake up and your joints feel like rusty hinges that need time to warm up, that's often a sign of inadequate synovial fluid. During sleep, you're not moving, so the fluid isn't circulating. If the fluid is thick and healthy, your joints should feel pretty good within a few minutes of movement. But if the fluid is thin, it takes much longer for everything to loosen up. The second sign is joints that crack or pop frequently. Now, occasional popping is normal. But if your knees crack every time you squat, or your shoulders pop every time you raise your arms, that suggests the cartilage surfaces are closer together than they should be. There's not enough cushioning between them. The third sign is pain that actually gets worse with inactivity. You might think joint pain would improve with rest, but often it's the opposite. If sitting for an hour makes your joints stiffer and more painful, that's because the synovial fluid needs movement to circulate properly. When the fluid is thin and inadequate, prolonged inactivity makes things worse, not better. The fourth sign is swelling that comes and goes. When synovial fluid can't protect cartilage from inflammatory cytokines, your body responds by producing extra fluid to try to dilute the inflammation. This causes temporary swelling. If your joints occasionally swell up, your knees get puffy, your fingers look thicker, that's often a sign that the protective barrier has failed. And the fifth sign is reduced range of motion. If you used to be able to touch your toes, and now you can barely reach your knees, if you used to be able to reach behind your back, and now you can't, if simple movements feel restricted and limited, that's your body telling you something is wrong. Healthy joints should move freely through a full range of motion. When they don't, It's usually because the cartilage is dehydrated and the fluid is inadequate. If you're experiencing 3 or more of these signs, there's a very good chance your synovial fluid has thinned significantly and your hyaluronan levels are low. And here's the critical thing to understand. This gets worse over time if you don't address it. Let me walk you through the progression, because understanding the timeline can be motivating. In the early stages, let's call this stage 1, you have occasional stiffness and minor discomfort. Maybe your knees feel a little achy after a long walk, where your hands are stiff first thing in the morning but feel fine after an hour. At this stage, your hyaluronan levels have dropped maybe 15 to 20% below optimal. Your synovial fluid is starting to thin, but it's still providing some protection. In stage 2, which typically develops over the next year or two, the symptoms become more frequent and more intense. Now you're dealing with daily discomfort. You're modifying your activities. You're avoiding stairs when you can. You're choosing seats based on how easy they'll be to get out of. Your hyaluronan levels at this stage might be down 30 to 40%. The synovial fluid is noticeably thinner, and cartilage is starting to show signs of wear. Stage 3 is where things get serious. This is significant mobility limitation. You're giving up hobbies you love. You're asking for help with tasks that used to be easy. You're in pain most of the day, even with minimal activity. At this point, hyaluronan might be down 50% or more. The synovial fluid is so thin that cartilage is grinding directly against cartilage with almost no cushioning. Inflammation is chronic, and the cycle becomes self-perpetuating. Inflammation breaks down more hyaluronan, which thins the fluid further, which causes more inflammation. And if you reach stage 4, you're looking at bone-on-bone grinding. This is severe osteoarthritis. Cartilage is gone in key areas. The joint space has collapsed. Doctors start talking about surgery, knee replacement, hip replacement. This is where you never wanted to end up, but it's where the natural progression leads if the root cause isn't addressed. Now here's the good news. The research shows it's possible to reverse this progression, even if you're in stage 2 or early stage 3. When you restore hyaluronan levels in synovial fluid, remarkable things can happen. The fluid thickens. Cartilage gets rehydrated. The inflammatory cascade slows down, and people start experiencing improvements they thought were impossible. In the clinical trials with Mobility, participants reported feeling changes within the first month. Not everyone, but a significant percentage. By month 3, the improvements were more pronounced. And by month 6, many participants said they felt better than they had in years. They were doing activities they'd given up. They were sleeping better because they weren't waking up in pain. They were more active with their families. Their quality of life transformed. But let me be very clear about something, because I don't want to overpromise. This is not a miracle cure. It's not going to work overnight. And it's not going to work for everyone in the same way. What it is a science-backed approach that addresses the actual root cause of age-related joint decline. It's based on published research. It's been tested in clinical trials. And for many people, it's been genuinely life-changing. What's not as a quick fix or a magic pill. You need to be consistent. You need to give it time. And you need to have realistic expectations. If you've had severe joint problems for 20 years, you're not going to be running marathons in 2 months. But you might be able to walk without pain. You might be able to garden again. You might be able to play with your grandkids. Those are the kinds of real, meaningful improvements people are experiencing. I also want to address another factor that accelerates joint decline, because knowledge is power, and the more you understand, the better decisions you can make. Environmental pollution is a bigger factor than most people realize. Studies have shown that airborne particulate matter, the tiny particles in polluted air, can trigger systemic inflammation that specifically affects joint tissue. Research published in the journal Arthritis Research and Therapy found that people living in areas with high air pollution had measurably faster breakdown of synovial fluid components, including hyaluronan. The pollution particles trigger inflammatory responses that produce enzymes called hyaluronidases. These enzymes specifically break down hyaluronan molecules, accelerating the thinning of synovial fluid. So if you live in or near a major city, or in an area with industrial pollution, your joints are under more stress than someone living in a rural area with clean air. This doesn't mean you need to move to the countryside, but it does mean you might need more aggressive support to maintain healthy hyaluronan levels. Diet also plays a role, though it's more subtle. Highly inflammatory foods, processed sugars, trans fats, excessive omega-6 fatty acids can increase the production of inflammatory cytokines that attack joint tissue. Conversely, an anti-inflammatory diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids, colorful vegetables, and antioxidants can help support joint health by reducing the inflammatory burden. But here's the thing. Diet alone isn't enough to restore depleted hyaluronan levels. The Usuruhara villagers maintained their levels through a traditional diet rich in specific compounds. But if you're already down 30, 40, 50% in hyaluronan, eating sweet potatoes isn't going to bring you back to optimal levels in a reasonable time frame. You need to eat multiple sweet potatoes every single day for months, maybe years. That's just not practical for most people. This is why the concentrated, bioavailable approach tested in the clinical trials is so valuable. It delivers therapeutic levels of the compounds that support hyaluronan synthesis without requiring extreme dietary changes. Let me also address the people who are thinking, I'm too far gone. My joints are already severely damaged. This probably won't work for me. I understand that feeling. When you've been dealing with severe joint pain for years, when you've tried multiple treatments that failed, it's hard to feel hopeful. But here's what the research shows. Even people with advanced osteoarthritis saw improvements in the clinical trials. Not everyone responded the same way. Some people saw dramatic improvements. Others saw modest but meaningful changes. And yes, a small percentage didn't respond at all. But the majority of participants, even those with significant joint damage, experienced some level of improvement. Because even if cartilage is partially degraded, restoring thick, healthy synovial fluid can still make a difference. It can reduce inflammation. It can help preserve the cartilage that remains. It can improve mobility and reduce pain. The key is consistency and patience. This is about changing the underlying biochemistry of your joints. That takes time, but the alternative, doing nothing and letting the progression continue, that's a choice too. And it's a choice that leads to more pain, more limitations, and potentially surgical interventions that come with their own risks and complications. Now, I mentioned earlier that I created a presentation that goes into all of this in much more detail. If you haven't watched it yet, I really encourage you to do so. The link is in the description below. That presentation shows you the actual clinical data. It reveals the specific protocol that was tested in the trials, and it explains how you can implement this approach yourself. This isn't about me selling you something. It's about giving you access to information that could genuinely change your life. The research is solid. The mechanism makes sense, and the results speak for themselves. Thousands of people are already using this protocol. Many of them were skeptical at first, just like you might be. But they took the time to learn the science. They tried the protocol, and they saw results. So don't let skepticism or past disappointments prevent you from investigating this. You owe it to yourself to at least understand what the research shows. Click that link in the description. Watch the presentation. Make an informed decision. That's all I'm asking. Before we wrap up, I want to mention one more thing. I created this channel because I believe people deserve accurate, science-based information about joint health. Too many people are suffering unnecessarily because they've been given outdated information or ineffective solutions. Too many doctors are still telling patients that joint pain is just normal aging and there's nothing they can do. And too many people are accepting a life of limitations because they don't know there are other options. My mission is to change that, to educate, to empower, to share the latest research in a way that's accessible and actionable. So if you found this video valuable, I'd appreciate your support. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. Hit that notification bell so you're alerted when I post new content. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this information. Your friend or family member who's struggling with joint pain deserves to understand what's really happening and what they can do about it. Also, drop a comment below. Tell me what joint issues you're dealing with. Are you experiencing knee pain, hip pain, shoulder problems, hand stiffness? What have you already tried? I read every comment, and I'll do my best to respond. And seeing your comments helps me understand what topics to cover in future videos. If this video helped you understand the real cause of joint pain, if it challenged what you thought you knew about wear and tear, if it gave you hope that improvement is possible, then my goal has been achieved. Share it. Help spread this information. Because the more people who understand this, the fewer people will suffer unnecessarily. One final point before I close. Dr. Richard Lozer, a rheumatologist at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, said something that really stuck with me. He said, "Your joints are not like automobile tires that wear out. They are living organs that can repair and regenerate if given the right conditions." That's the key insight. Your joints are living tissue. They respond to how you treat them. They can get worse if neglected, but they can also get better if you address the root cause. And now you know what that root cause is: the progressive loss of hyaluronan in synovial fluid. You know why the wear and tear theory is wrong. You know why glucosamine doesn't work. And you know there's a research-backed approach that targets the actual mechanism. What you do with this information is up to you. You can watch that presentation and learn more. You can make changes to support your joint health. Or you can close this video and go back to accepting that pain and limitations are just your reality. But I hope you choose the first option. I hope you take action, because your quality of life matters. Your ability to do the things you love matters. And you deserve better than being told there's nothing you can do. Remember, everything in this video is for educational and informational purposes only. This content does not constitute medical advice and should not replace consultation with your physician. Always talk to your doctor before making any changes to your health routine or starting any new supplement. What I've shared today is based on published research, but your individual health situation is unique, and only your healthcare provider can give you personalized medical guidance. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check that presentation in the description. Take care of your joints, and I'll see you in the next video.